talking about being bored with my show and wanting it to be something more feels like I'm committing to something big, because if I say it and I record it and I publish it and you hear it, then it means I can't pretend that it never happened. Then it means I can't pretend that I never said it. And then it means that if I never do anything about it, you're like, well, that girl really talks about a lot of stuff that she never does. You're listening to The Creative Impostor, episode number 45. Welcome to The Creative Impostor. I'm Andrea Klunder, and I am recording this episode late in the evening on Sunday prior to Labor Day, and I'm forcing myself to do it now, late, just so that I don't overthink this. Okay, so this is episode number 45. The last episode, number 44, if you listened to that interview with my podcasting idol, with my podcasting guru, she would hate that title, my podcasting inspiration, Elsie Escobar, you will have heard me admit that I have gotten bored with my podcast. And it is not the fault of my guests. I have some amazing interviews in the queue that I have not yet released, that I am excited to release. It's really just myself. I've gotten bored with hearing myself talk, and I have especially gotten bored with hearing myself think. And yet, that conversation that I had with Elsie in episode 44 allowed me to speculate with her on the potential for podcasting to shift the cultural narrative, to affect some kind of change, to be more than what it currently is. And if there is anything that I have learned about my own personality over the last however many years of being an entrepreneur and practicing yoga and meditating and doing all kinds of personal growth work, it's that I love trying to find innovative ways to make things more than they already are, to get the most effect or potential or I don't even know what out of the things that we want to do. So it's not just enough to be an actor. I want to be an actor who performs in an experimental way in a piece that makes people think about something in a new way. And it's not just enough to open a yoga studio. I want it to be a holistic yoga studio and spa that offers more than just classes, but like a full experience of health and well-being. And it's not enough just to have a podcast where I interview really cool, amazing people about entrepreneurship and creativity. I want it to be something more. And I've started to do that with the Your Story podcast, which you have probably also heard me mention. And this is a program that I launched this summer with a group of high school students in Chicago who attend a school for students with diverse learning challenges and special needs. And that podcast, the first season, is available right now in your favorite podcast player or app, or you can find it at our website, poweryourstorypodcast.com. And it's a good start. I feel really proud of that work, and Season 2 will begin production in October. But besides that, I feel like there's room to build more. So after talking with Elsie, I kept thinking and the wheels kept turning, and I wasn't sure what was going to come next. And then I went to Podcast Movement last week. And this is the big podcasting conference of the year, and it was my second time attending this conference. And this year, I decided to do things a little differently than last year. Last year, the conference was in Chicago, my home turf, and I went with friends, which was amazing because I got to spend time with them and get to know them better. And I focused on wanting to learn as much as humanly possible because the organizers of Podcast Movement bring in all the best people to teach us a wide variety of things in the context of marketing in the context of business, in tech, in industry-related topics, in content, in speaking, in creativity. I mean, really, there's like nothing you can't learn about podcasting at Podcast Movement. And it's really hard to choose which sessions to go to because there's all these amazing breakout sessions that all happen at the same time. And so I wanted to make sure that I would get there first thing in the morning every day and pack in as much learning as possible. Here is the problem with that. I have discovered as of late that I'm really more of an introvert than I thought I was, which means that being around all those people and trying to learn all that stuff, it just drained me so much that by the time that all of the social functions, the parties and the awards program and all of the networking functions that happen in the evening, by the time those would roll around, I just didn't want to talk to anybody else. I just wanted to go home. And so I skipped all of that. And also, because I was with my friends, I had no need to push myself out of my comfort zone and meet new people and talk to strangers because, well, I was already having a great time. I didn't need anybody else. But that's missing part of the whole point. I am somebody who does not like anything with the word networking in it. Contrary to popular belief, I am not comfortable talking to strangers. I mean, I can do it if I'm standing in my kitchen pantry recording studio talking into a microphone and I can't see you. And then you can't see the sweat stains forming in my shirt. Anyways, networking and parties and talking to strangers, I know I should be doing that, but it is not usually the thing I want to prioritize, and especially when I've already drained myself by cramming my head full of information and ideas all day long. So this year, I decided that I needed to do something differently. And my strategy was to not force myself into a bunch of really amazing sessions, but to take my time, get enough sleep, wake up late, head to the hotel, attend a couple of sessions, make sure that I gave myself downtime in a quiet corner of the coffee shop inside the hotel, with my headphones on so that clearly I didn't want to talk to anybody at that moment, and then maintain my energy for the socials, the parties, the networking, the connecting. And it turned out it was a lot of fun to do things that way. I mean, it helped that I had planted the seeds for that by joining Elsie's mentoring program, which involved getting to know a group of women podcasters online. So this gave me the opportunity to meet a bunch of them in person for the first time. And it helped me to realize, which I sort of understood intellectually, but I really got a visceral experience of it this time, which is that when you go to a conference like Podcast Movement, people are there because they want to talk to strangers. They want to expand their network. They want to meet people. They want to make connections. And that is the key right there. Connections. It's not networking, and it's not trying to collect as many business cards as possible. And it's not trying to find people to listen to your show or be on your show. It's all about making connections, looking to see who is here. Who do I want to know? Who can I help or support in some way, shape, or form? What can I learn from the other people who are here? And a lot of times that doesn't happen in a session. Now, I did make sure to attend more of the interactive sessions than lectures so that if it was a panel, a lot of times there's an opportunity to stand up and say your name and introduce what you're working on, and then to ask a question. And that was a really great way of, again, getting out of my comfort zone because I am never the one who stands up and asks a question. But in this case, I came prepared. I wrote down questions that I could ask at that particular panel, and it gave me the opportunity to talk about my students' work and the program that I'm doing there and to open up new avenues of conversation, different than how can I get more people to listen to my show? How can I make money from my show? How can I get more downloads, etc., etc., etc. So this is really important, not because you care what my experience was like at a conference for podcasting, and maybe not even because you need networking tips or conference tips for your own business or your own brand. But this is important because of something that was brought to my attention when I got home from the conference. And this was a training that my partner was watching on the website creativelive.com, which I've definitely mentioned before, with someone named Mel Robbins. And now I had never heard of Mel before, but apparently she's done some TEDx talks and has published a book and is really quite amazing. And I don't even remember the name of the training on Creative Live this time around, but she was talking about imposter syndrome and self-confidence and self-doubt. And my partner was like, you have to watch this. You have to watch this right now. We have to watch it. And so I was like, oh God, another training. But he was right. What Mel was talking about in terms of imposter syndrome was that it is totally normal. Whenever you are doing something new, of course you're going to feel like an imposter. Of course you're going to feel like a fake because it's new. You don't know how to do it. You're expanding, you're pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone, creating something new, taking a risk. And she says that if you are not experiencing imposter syndrome, it means that you're too comfortable. You've gotten lazy, you're not growing, and you're not challenging yourself. And I was like, whoa, talk about imposter syndrome. Even though I had these tactics planned out for how I was going to deal with the conference and how I was going to take risks and how I was going to try something new and how I was going to talk to as many strangers as possible, I still was like, who on earth am I? Why would they want to talk to me? And I really had to put those thoughts out of my mind. And I always thought that the whole networking thing and getting comfortable in social situations like that was all about having the right mindset. I just kept thinking, if I can just wrap my mind around this idea of connection as opposed to networking, if I can wrap my mind around the idea that these people really do want to talk to me, then I can just be more confident and do it. Well, I never got my mindset to be that. But Mel says that's fine because there's so much emphasis on mindset in today's coaching world and self-help world and entrepreneurial world and in podcasts, mindset. And I've certainly talked about mindset a lot on this show, but she says that it's actually behavior that changes mindset, that by taking an action and doing something differently than how you've been doing, that's what will start to change your mind, because then your mind will see you taking this action and will start to see you as a person who behaves in that certain way. And then, if your mind sees you behaving as a person who would behave in that certain way, you're no longer an imposter because you're doing the thing. So it's like that phrase, if you want to be, do, it's that. Does that make sense? I feel like that was really confusing. Okay. There's another thing that Mel talked about, which she called the 4 traps. And this is what happens when you are stuck in a cycle of self-doubt or feeling like an imposter. You will find yourself hesitating, being hypercritical, hiding, or feeling completely helpless. Do any of those 4 traps sound familiar to you? Hesitating, being hypercritical, hiding, or feeling completely helpless. I'm going to come back to this in a minute. Remember episode 42 called Come Over and Play, when I talked about reframing the idea of self-promotion as an invitation for people to come over and play in your creative space? Well, I still believe that's true. And I also stand behind everything that Ruth Humphreys and I talked about in episode 43, Have Your Ice Cream First. Connecting with your inner child, looking at problems or opportunities for growth in your life as an extension of play and childlike wonder. Well, I've been doing that ever since those episodes, which came out in the end of June and July. And I've been giving myself a little bit of introspective time to not really be publishing new content and to be mulling over some different ideas and opportunities for growth in my business and ways to combat this boredom. And I've come up with a whole long list of experiments that I'd like to try, or things that I'd like to do differently in my life or in my work or in my business or in the Chicago Women's Creative Collective or in the Creative Impostor Facebook group or on my show. And at the same time that I'm coming up with all of these playful ideas, I'm also feeling a sense of resistance to actually take any action and do anything, which all the creative ideas in the world mean nothing if you don't actually ever implement them or do anything. In fact, I was even having resistance to recording this particular episode, and that's why I forced myself to do it late in the evening so that I could just get over it and do Mel's technique that she talks about, which is just to count down when you are feeling like procrastinating something and you don't want to do it. Just 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, just do it. And so this is where I am. And I'm like, why am I feeling this resistance? Why is it so hard just to take this action and record this episode and get it out there? And I think it's because taking the action feels like a commitment to something. Talking about being bored with my show and wanting it to be something more feels like I'm committing to something big. Because if I say it and I record it and I publish it and you hear it, then it means I can't pretend that it never happened. Then it means I can't pretend that I never said it. And then it means that if I never do anything about it, you're like, well, that girl really talks about a lot of stuff that she never does. So I don't actually think that about myself. But you can see how these little imposter stories can start to spin away with you, right? And so that comes back to taking action. So here I am doing that, recording this episode and making a public commitment to you to always be growing and shifting and changing, to listen to that gut intuition that tells me that I'm bored and to say, okay, well then how could I not be bored? I'm the one in control of this party. So how can I make it interesting and engaging? And how can I push the boundaries and expand the possibility for what we are creating here together in this podcast relationship through this technological, magical, modern connection that we have? One of the women who I got to connect with at Podcast Movement because I made myself go to an after party on a rooftop bar. I know, it's like, really? You're complaining about going to a party on a rooftop bar in Southern California? I mean, come on. Anyways, if you're imagining yourself going to a party like that, not knowing anyone and awkwardly standing in the corner with a drink in your hand, not having anyone to talk to with a fake awkward smile plastered on your face, feeling like a total imposter and a total loser, then that's what I tend to imagine when I think of these kinds of parties. So fortunately, I met Julie Neal, ahead of time, and we decided to go to the party together. Not only that, but we found the perfect spot on this rooftop where there was some comfy, loungy seating around one of those tabletop fireplace things. I don't really think I've seen those in Chicago. I don't know. Anyways, the perfect little cozy fireplace spot. And we just planted ourselves right there. And because the real estate was so prime, people just came to us and we got to talk to all kinds of interesting people. So who is Julie? Julie is a mom and a podcaster and a coach. Her show is Mother's Quest. And one thing that Julie likes to do on her show is she likes to have her guests challenge her to do something. So what Julie is doing that's interesting and a little bit outside the box is rounding up a group of women podcasters and administering a challenge to us to commit to doing at least one episode in the month of September in solidarity for the Black Lives Matter movement and all of the people who are affected and directly touched by this issue. So Julie asked me if I wanted to be a part of that, and my first reaction was like, oh no. Nope, not doing that. Why? Because this is a topic that really brings up my imposter syndrome. Remember those 4 traps that I mentioned from Mel's talk on Creative Live a moment ago, and I said I was going to come back to this? Those traps, again, are hesitating, being hypercritical, hiding, and feeling helpless. That pretty much sums up how I feel about racism, about a lot of current events that are happening. If you will recall back to the beginning of the year when I went to the Women's March in Washington, D.C. with a group, and I had this idea that I wanted to do an audio documentary about my experience. Well, that totally fell flat because I got to this place where I was like, I don't understand what's going on. I see problems within the movement. I am not comfortable talking about racism and racial tension. I don't think it's good, and I want to do something about it. But every time there's a conversation, I don't know what to say, or I feel like I'm going to say the wrong thing, or I'm not going to be helpful, or I'm going to say something insensitive. Like, I just feel like a complete idiot when it comes to this topic. So, suffice it to say, my initial reaction was resistance. Again, great idea, probably should do it, makes a lot of sense, is in alignment with so many of my values, is a great opportunity, and I have a whole lot of resistance. But again, I've been learning that resistance is a good sign because it means that you're on the right track. And as Mel would say, the difference between confidence and self-doubt is this. Confidence equals the decision to try, and self-doubt equals the decision not to. So I said yes. And just like that, I'm not bored with my podcast anymore. Not by any means. So coming up this week, I'm going to be interviewing a few incredible guests because, again, I did not feel confident trying to make an episode all by myself. I knew that I needed to reach out to my community to talk to some new people and get some new, fresh perspective, which is part of why I started this show in the first place, was to have a really great excuse to reach out to people and have in-depth, interesting conversations that I wouldn't normally get a chance to have. So I'm going to be talking to Andrea Renee Johnson, who is a coach, facilitator, and writer who is launching this month, September 2017, a 10-week program called Coaching as Activism. I saw it on Facebook and it jumped right out at me because, of course, if there's anything that we can learn from doing vision collages, it's that when you put your mind to work on something, suddenly you will start to see solutions to that thing everywhere. And I was like, I need to do this episode. I don't know what to say or how to approach this topic. And there's my answer right there. So this 10-week leadership program is for coaches, healers, and leaders who want to bring their commitment to healing, justice, and liberation for all into their life and work. I'm also going to be talking to Ashley Lana Scott, who is a Chicago-based artist and community organizer who is currently working on launching a program about fearlessness called Audacious Living. And when I put a call out on Facebook for people who wanted to talk about this topic, and I'm going to say more specifically too, not just the topic of racism and Black Lives Matter, but because this show is the Creative Impostor and we're talking about imposter syndrome, specifically I put a call out that I was looking for people to help unpack why it is that some of us white people or whoever people feel like a fake when they want to be an ally or want to be a positive force in this topic and in this conversation, but feel like a complete fraud and feel paralyzed, totally helpless when it comes to being an ally or being an advocate. And Ashley stepped up right away as wanting to talk about this topic. And also Sarah Dennis, who was referred to me because she is someone who has a PhD in education and currently works to teach anti-racism to teachers. And that phrase, anti-racism, something I had never heard of until talking to Sarah. And I'm super excited to discover this approach to dealing with this topic. So she is teaching anti-racism to teachers and also to her own 9-year-old daughter. So I have an exciting week ahead of me, and I can't wait to share these conversations with you. Are you as excited as I am about the new direction that the show is taking? This is where we're going for September, and then I have a few ideas of where we go beyond that for October, but I guarantee that I am looking for new ways to explore this topic of creativity and imposter syndrome to help empower you to expand your awareness and step out of your comfort zone, push your own boundaries, and to live in a creative way that is truly fulfilling on a lot of different levels. So here's how you can get involved. And really, I don't want to do this unless you're along for the ride. Go to thecreativeimpostor.com/magic. And there you will find an opportunity to get a free download of something called a Yoga Nidra Creative Visualization. That's an audio download and a PDF that will help you to get clear on your own vision for the next steps in your life. Dare I say, for your life's purpose? Doing this practice will help you discover how you can grow and challenge yourself. Then, once you've done this Yoga Nidra practice once, twice, 25 times, or never, maybe you are already very clear on what your next challenge steps are, what action you can take to help shift your mindset, rather than waiting for your mindset to magically shift itself so that you can take action. Once you're clear on what your challenge is right now and what your next steps to take you out of your comfort zone and into a whole new space in your life or in your work or in your art, I want you to go to the Creative Impostor Facebook group. You can search for it, or you can connect directly by going to thecreativeimpostor.com/FB for Facebook, and tell me, what steps are you committing to take action, to move out of imposter syndrome, to grow, to shift, to expand? Post a comment in the Facebook group. What's your challenge right now? What's your creative edge? What steps are you taking? And put the hashtag take action. So again, thecreativeimpostor.com/magic to get your Yoga Nidra creative visualization to help you get clear on your vision and the next steps that you can take to move out of imposter syndrome and move forward towards that vision. Then post in the Creative Impostor Facebook group, hashtag take action. And stay tuned for the upcoming episodes this month in solidarity of the Black Lives Matter movement and becoming anti-racist. And I would love to hear what you think of those conversations as well. This episode was mixed by Edwin Ruiz of Mondo Machine, and our theme music is by Jovia Armstrong. I thank you so much for listening, and I am wishing you a week filled with action over mindset and listening to that imposter voice to help steer you in the right direction.